The charity gala at the Palmer House was in full swing when my wife Teresa decided to destroy what was left of my dignity. The crystal chandeliers cast their warm glow over Chicago's elite, their laughter mixing with the clink of champagne glasses and the soft murmur of networking conversations. I stood near the silent auction table, examining a weekend getaway package to Lake Geneva, when Teresa's voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade through silk. "Oh, Martin's here somewhere," she said to her circle of admirers, her voice carrying that particular tone she reserved for public humiliation. "Probably hiding by the appetizer table. You know how he is, always looking for the easy meal." I turned slowly, my hand still resting on the auction clipboard. Teresa stood 15 feet away, resplendent in her black Vera Wang dress, surrounded by her usual court of sycophants. Her auburn hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon, diamond earrings catching the light as she gestured dismissively in my direction. "Teresa," I said quietly, approaching the group. "Having a good time?" She barely glanced at me before continuing her performance. "Martin's what you might call professionally challenged," she announced to the circle, which included the Hendersons from Lincoln Park, the Washingtons from Gold Coast, and that insufferable bore, Patricia Mills, who owned half of River North. "He sells commercial real estate, which is basically just showing empty buildings to people who already know they want them." The group chuckled politely. Patricia Mills, a woman whose face had been surgically enhanced so many times, she looked like a wax figure, tilted her head with mock sympathy. "Oh, but Martin, surely you have some big deals brewing?" "Actually," I began. "Martin's biggest deal last month was a strip mall in Schaumburg," Teresa interrupted, her smile sharp as broken glass. 12,000 square feet of pure ambition." More laughter. "But don't worry about us. My agency keeps us afloat. Thank God one of us has drive." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger. I'd moved past anger months ago when I'd started documenting Teresa's increasingly public displays of contempt. This was something else. Clarity, perhaps, or maybe just the final click of a lock turning. "You're absolutely right," I said, my voice level. "Maybe I should just disappear." Teresa's eyes flicked to me for the first time all evening, perhaps catching something in my tone. But the moment passed quickly as she turned back to her audience. "If only I could be so lucky," she said with a theatrical sigh. I walked away without another word, leaving my wife to bask in the laughter of people who would forget her name the moment she stopped being useful to them. In the marble-floored lobby of the Palmer House, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I'd memorized but never called. "Harold, it's Martin Hale. Yes, I know it's late. I need you to start the paperwork we discussed. All of it. Tonight." Harold Morrison had been my grandfather's attorney for 30 years before becoming mine. 3 months ago, he'd called with news that changed everything. My grandfather's estate, which I'd assumed would go to my cousins or charity, had been left entirely to me. $20 million, sitting in a trust that required only my signature to access. I'd told no one. Not Teresa, not our friends, not even my sister, Nina. Something had held me back, some instinct that said this secret was a weapon I might need someday, that someday had arrived. The next morning, Teresa was gone before I woke up, another client emergency that would keep her busy until evening. I made coffee in our Lincoln Park kitchen, watching the joggers on the lakefront path through our floor-to-ceiling windows. The condo had cost us $400,000 3 years ago, back when Teresa still pretended to respect my contribution to our finances. My phone buzzed with a text from my old friend Cameron Walsh. "Saw the social media posts from last night. You okay, buddy?" I scrolled through Facebook and found the photos Patricia Mills had posted. There was Teresa, radiant and commanding, surrounded by admirers. The caption read, "Such a dynamic woman, building an empire while some people just coast along. Sure power couple. Chicago elite." The comments were predictably savage. Some couples have 2 engines, some have 1 engine and X weight. Teresa Hale is a force of nature, lucky Martin. When one person carries the whole relationship, we all know someone like this. I closed the app and opened my laptop instead. Harold had sent me the trust documents, bank routing numbers, and a list of recommended financial advisors. $20 million. The number still seemed surreal, like a typo that would be corrected any moment. But it wasn't a typo. My grandfather, Robert Hale, had been a silent partner in several Chicago construction companies for 40 years. He'd lived modestly in a Ravenswood bungalow, driving the same Buick for 15 years, eating at the same diner every Tuesday. When he passed away last year, everyone assumed he'd left behind enough for a decent funeral and maybe a few thousand for his grandchildren. Everyone was wrong. The trust documents included a sealed letter addressed to me. I'd read it dozens of times, but I pulled it out again now. Martin, by the time you read this, you'll know about the money. I'm leaving it to you because you're the only one in this family who understands the value of keeping your mouth shut and your head down. I've been watching you for years, watching how that wife of yours treats you like hired help, watching how you take it with dignity. That's strength, not weakness. Most people never learn the difference. Use this money wisely. Use it quietly. And remember, the best revenge is living well, but sometimes living well requires a little strategic thinking. Your grandfather, Robert. I'd hired a private investigator 2 weeks after receiving the inheritance. David Chen was a former Chicago PD detective who specialized in domestic cases. His report, delivered last Friday, contained everything I needed to know about Teresa's client emergencies. Victor Sloan, 39, hedge fund manager at Meridian Capital. Divorced, no children, penthouse apartment in Streeterville. He'd been Teresa's client for 8 months, though his company had never actually hired her agency for any PR work. Hotel receipts from the Langham, the Peninsula, the Ritz-Carlton, always the same pattern. Teresa would claim a client crisis, disappear for 4 to 6 hours, and return home energized and cheerful. The photographs were tastefully shot, but unambiguous. Teresa and Victor entering the Langham together. Teresa and Victor having lunch at a Linea. Teresa and Victor shopping on Michigan Avenue, her hand resting on his arm with unmistakable intimacy. But the real treasure was the digital evidence. Teresa had been careless with her iPad, leaving it synced to her iPhone. David had provided me with screenshots of text conversations that would make a divorce attorney weep with joy. Can't wait to see you tonight. Martin's working late again. God, he's so predictable. Your husband has no idea how lucky he is. If you were mine, I'd never let you out of my sight. Sometimes I think about what life would be like if I'd never settled for safe and boring. Soon, babe. Soon we won't have to sneak around anymore. I closed the laptop and poured another cup of coffee. Through the window, Lake Michigan stretched endlessly toward the horizon, its surface choppy with whitecaps. In 6 hours, Teresa would come home with some story about crisis management and difficult clients. She'd kiss my cheek absently and ask what I'd done with my day, already mentally composing her next text to Victor. But today would be different. Today, I would begin the careful work of dismantling the life she'd built on lies and contempt. My phone rang. Harold Morrison's name appeared on the screen. Martin, I've got good news. The LLC paperwork is complete, and I've found you a property that matches your specifications. It's the estate in Oak Brook. 6 bedrooms, 4 acres, complete privacy. The owner's motivated to sell quickly. How quickly? Cash deal? 2 weeks. I smiled for the first time in months. Do it. Moving out of our Lincoln Park condo required the kind of precision planning I'd learned from 20 years in commercial real estate. Every detail mattered. Every timeline had to align perfectly. Most importantly, Teresa couldn't suspect anything until it was far too late to stop me. I started with the finances. Our joint accounts contained roughly $40,000, money I'd contributed from my commissions over the past year. I withdrew my half and closed my access to the accounts, leaving Teresa's portion untouched. I wasn't a thief, just a man reclaiming his independence. The personal items were trickier. Teresa's schedule was predictable. Agency meetings until 6, dinner with clients or clients until 10, home by 11 if I was lucky. That gave me a 4-hour window each evening to systematically pack my life into storage boxes. Books first. 20 years of accumulated reading, from real estate law to military history to the crime novels I'd started reading after discovering Teresa's affair. Each book got wrapped carefully and placed in labeled boxes that went straight to a storage unit in Schaumburg, then clothes. I took only what I'd paid for myself, leaving behind the expensive suits Teresa had bought me for her agency's events. Those clothes belonged to the version of Martin Hale who'd stood silently while his wife humiliated him in public. The new Martin would dress himself. The hardest part was the photographs. 20 years of marriage documented in silver frames throughout the condo. Our wedding day at the Chicago Botanic Garden. Vacations to Napa Valley, Key West, Aspen. Holiday parties and anniversary dinners and quiet moments that had once meant everything to me. I left them all behind. Those memories belonged to a different life, one where I'd believed love meant accepting cruelty in small doses until you built up immunity to larger ones. Cameron helped with the heavy lifting. My oldest friend since college, Cam had watched my marriage deteriorate with the patient concern of someone who cared too much to lie about what he was seeing. "You sure about this?" he asked as we loaded my desk into his pickup truck. "Maybe you should talk to her first. Try counseling." "We're past talking, Cam." "But 20 years, Martin. That's got to count for something." I paused, a box of legal documents balanced in my arms. "You were at the charity gala last month. You heard what she said about me." Cam's face darkened. "That was just Teresa being Teresa. You know how she gets around those people." "No," I said quietly. "That was Teresa being honest for the first time in years. She thinks I'm a failure and a burden. Maybe she's right about the failure part, but I don't have to be her burden anymore." We finished loading the truck in silence. As Cam drove toward the storage facility, I watched the Lincoln Park neighborhood slide past the windows, the tree-lined streets where Teresa and I had walked on Sunday mornings, the coffee shops where we'd planned our future, the park where we'd talked about buying a house and starting a family. That future had faded somewhere along the way, ruined by 1,000 small cruelties and the slow poison of contempt. I felt no nostalgia for it now, only relief that I was finally strong enough to walk away. The Oak Brook house was everything Harold had promised. 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a chef's kitchen that opened onto a great room with 20-foot ceilings. The master suite occupied the entire second floor, with a private balcony overlooking 4 acres of wooded privacy. The previous owner had been a tech executive who'd been transferred to Seattle. His loss was my liberation. I signed the papers on a Tuesday morning while Teresa was at her agency, probably planning her next romantic getaway with Victor. The house cost me $2.8 million, paid in cash from my grandfather's trust. I'd never owned anything outright before. The condo had a mortgage, my car had payments, even my watch was financed through Teresa's jewelry store account. But this house was mine. Completely, legally, irrevocably mine. I spent my first night there alone, eating Chinese takeout on the kitchen island while rain drummed against the windows. The house felt enormous and empty, but it also felt clean in a way I hadn't experienced in years. No tension hanging in the air, no walking on eggshells around someone's mood, no pretending that cruelty was just personality quirk, just silence and space and the profound peace of a life rebuilt from nothing. My phone buzzed with a text from Teresa. "Working late again. Don't wait up." I deleted the message without responding and poured myself a glass of wine from a bottle I'd bought with my own money. Through the kitchen windows, I could see the lights of other houses scattered across the Oak Brook hills, families settling in for the evening, couples sharing dinner and conversation, children being tucked into bed with stories and kisses. I'd thought I wanted that life once. Now I understood that some people weren't meant for partnership. Some people were meant to build something beautiful and strong and entirely their own. The rain continued to fall, washing away the last traces of the man I'd been before I learned the value of silence, patience, and $20 million in carefully managed investments. Tomorrow, Teresa would discover that I'd vanished. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Teresa found the note on Thursday morning. I'd left it propped against the coffee maker, where she'd be sure to see it during her rushed morning routine. The message was brief and precise. Teresa, I've moved out. My attorney will contact yours regarding divorce proceedings. I wish you well in your future endeavors. Martin. I wasn't there to witness her reaction, but I could imagine it. First, confusion. Surely this was some kind of joke or temporary tantrum. Then anger. How dare I leave without permission or explanation? Finally, panic. What would this do to her carefully constructed image as the successful half of a power couple? My phone started ringing at 8:47 a.m. I was having breakfast on the terrace of my new house, reading the Wall Street Journal while cardinals flitted through the oak trees. Teresa's name appeared on my screen, followed immediately by a voicemail notification. I let it go to voicemail. The second call came at 9:15, then 9:23. By noon, I had 17 missed calls and 12 voicemail messages. I listened to them while walking the perimeter of my property, marking spots where I might plant a garden in the spring. The messages followed a predictable arc. Message 1. Martin, what the hell is this note supposed to mean? Call me back immediately. Message 3. This is ridiculous. Whatever you think you're proving, you've made your point. Come home so we can talk like adults. Message 7. I know you're getting these messages. This silent treatment is childish and cruel. I don't deserve this. Message 12. Please, Martin, I'm scared. I don't understand what's happening. Just tell me where you are. The fear in her voice during that last message almost broke my resolve. Almost. Then I remembered the charity gala and Patricia Mills's social media posts and the hotel receipts David Chen had documented so thoroughly. I deleted all the messages without responding. By Friday evening, Teresa had recruited reinforcements. Cameron called while I was grilling a steak on my new deck, the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Martin, what the hell are you doing? Teresa's been calling everyone, trying to find you. She's worried sick. Is she? Of course she is. Her husband disappeared overnight. How do you think that makes her feel? I took a sip of wine and watched a deer emerge from the tree line at the edge of my property. How did it make me feel when she told a room full of people that I was extra weight? Cam was quiet for a moment. Look, I get it. Teresa can be harsh sometimes. But you don't just vanish on someone you've been married to for 20 years. That's not how decent people handle problems. You're right, I said. Decent people don't handle problems that way. They also don't cheat on their spouses with hedge fund managers. Another pause. Longer this time. What are you talking about? Victor Sloan, Meridian Capital, 8 months of hotel receipts and love notes. Did Teresa mention that part when she was crying about her missing husband? Jesus, Martin. Are you sure? I'm sure. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't ready to do anything about it yet. Now I am. Cam sighed heavily. So what's the plan? You're going to hide in the suburbs until she files for divorce? Something like that. This isn't like you, man. You're not vindictive. I cut into my steak and watched the juices run pink across the plate. Maybe I should have been vindictive a long time ago. Maybe if I'd stood up for myself instead of taking her shit with a smile, we wouldn't be here. Where are you staying? Teresa's going crazy trying to figure out where you went. I bought a house. You bought a house? With what money? And why didn't you tell me you were looking? I smiled, remembering my grandfather's letter about the value of keeping your mouth shut. There's a lot I haven't told you, Cam. There's a lot I haven't told anyone. After I hung up, I sat on my deck until full darkness fell and the first stars appeared above the tree canopy. My phone continued to buzz with calls and texts. Teresa, her friends, our mutual acquaintances, even my sister Nina calling from Denver to ask what was going on. I ignored them all. This was my time now, my space, my silence. For 20 years, I'd been available to everyone else's needs and demands and emotional emergencies. I'd been the reliable one, the steady one, the one who could be counted on to absorb whatever punishment life handed out. But reliability was just another word for predictability, and predictability was just another word for weakness. People only respected what they couldn't control or take for granted. Teresa was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The photographs appeared on social media 3 weeks after I'd moved out. I hadn't posted them. I wasn't even on social media anymore, having deleted all my accounts the day after I left. But Oak Brook was a small community, and news of the mysterious new resident in the Thornfield estate had spread quickly through local circles. Patricia Mills found the pictures first, of course. Her Instagram account was a carefully curated shrine to Chicago's social hierarchy, and she had an unerring instinct for dramatic developments among her circle. The photos showed my house from the street, the circular drive, the stone facade, the perfectly manicured grounds that the previous owner had maintained with religious devotion. The caption was vintage Patricia. "Someone's been keeping secrets. Looks like Martin Hale has been busy while his wife was building her empire. This Oak Brook estate just sold for $2.8 million cash. Who knew commercial real estate was so lucrative?" Plot twist. Der Chicago elite, check secret millionaire. The comments section exploded within hours. Wait, is this the same Martin that Teresa was calling an irresponsible at the Palmer house? Holy shit, he bought the Thornfield place. That house is insane. I'm confused. Didn't Teresa say he was basically unemployed? Maybe he's not as lazy as she thought? This is awkward. Really, really awkward. My phone rang at 2:17 p.m. Teresa's name on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail as usual. This time, though, her message was different. "Martin, I saw the pictures. I don't understand what's happening, but we need to talk, please. I know I've been difficult lately, but this isn't the way to handle our problems. Call me back." I deleted the message and poured myself a scotch instead. Through my kitchen windows, I could see a landscaping crew working on the neighbor's property, preparing their gardens for winter. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that they were witnessing the slow-motion destruction of a 20-year marriage. The second wave of social media attention came from Teresa's own circle. Someone had screenshot Patricia's post and shared it in the private Facebook group where Chicago's PR elite gossiped about clients and competitors. Teresa belonged to that group. So did most of her agency's clients. By evening, the speculation had reached fever pitch. Has anyone talked to Teresa about this? She's been radio silent all day. I heard she didn't know about the house. Like, at all. How do you not know your husband bought a $3 million house? Maybe she's not as on top of her personal life as she pretends to be. This explains why he walked out of the charity gala. She was trashing him while he was sitting on millions. I'm eager to know where the money came from. Martin never seemed like the secret wealth type. The comments grew more pointed as the evening progressed. Remember when Teresa said she was carrying their whole relationship financially? This is so embarrassing for her. She basically called him a loser in front of everyone. I bet she's calling him nonstop now. They were right about that last part. My phone showed 43 missed calls by the time I went to bed, all from Teresa. I'd stopped listening to the voicemails after the first few, but I could see the progression in the message timestamps, every 15 minutes from 3 p.m. until nearly midnight. Desperation had a schedule, apparently. The next morning brought a new development. David Chen called while I was having coffee on my terrace, his voice tight with professional concern. "Martin, we might have a problem. Someone's been asking questions about you around town. Professional questions." "What kind of questions?" "Employment history, financial background, real estate transactions. The kind of questions a private investigator asks when they're building a profile." I smiled grimly. Teresa hired someone to find out about the money. That's what I'm thinking. You want me to look into it? No need. Let her waste her money on an investigation. She won't find anything illegal or embarrassing. My grandfather's estate was completely legitimate. Your grandfather? I realized I'd never told David about the inheritance. For 3 months, I'd kept that secret locked away so tightly that even my own investigator didn't know the source of my newfound wealth. Long story, I said. The short version is that my grandfather left me a substantial inheritance. I've been sitting on it, waiting for the right moment to make some changes in my life. Jesus, Martin, how substantial are we talking? Substantial enough to buy this house with cash and still have plenty left over for whatever comes next. David was quiet for a moment, processing this information. So, when Teresa's investigator digs into your finances, they'll find a perfectly legal inheritance from a family member she never bothered to get to know. They'll find trust documents and bank transfers and investment accounts, all properly documented and reported to the IRS. And they'll find out that you've been planning this for months. Exactly. Another pause. Martin, I have to ask, what's the end game here? You've got the house, you've got the money, you've made your point. What happens next? I watched a hawk circle over the tree line, riding the thermals with effortless grace. Next, Teresa learns what it feels like when the person you've been taking for granted decides to stop playing along. The confrontation came on a Saturday morning in November, 3 months after I'd moved to Oak Brook. I was in my home office reviewing investment portfolios that Harold Morrison had recommended when my security system chimed with an alert. Someone was at the front gate. The camera feed showed Teresa's white BMW idling at the entrance to my driveway. She was alone, wearing the black wool coat I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. Even through the grainy security footage, I could see the tension in her posture, the way her hands gripped the steering wheel like she was preparing for battle. My finger hovered over the intercom button for a long moment. I could let her in, hear whatever she'd come to say, maybe even find some path toward a civilized divorce. Or I could leave her sitting at the gate, staring at the house she'd never seen, contemplating the money she'd never known about. I pressed the button. Hello, Teresa. Her voice crackled through the speaker, tight with barely controlled emotion. Martin, please. We need to talk. I'm not sure we have anything to discuss. Don't do this. Don't be cruel. Just let me in. Cruel. The word hung in the air between us, transmitted through electronic circuits and 18 months of accumulated resentment. I thought about the charity gala, about Patricia Mills's social media posts, about all the small humiliations that Teresa had administered with surgical precision over the years. Drive up to the house, I said finally. Park by the front door. I watched through my office window as her car wound up the circular drive. She parked carefully, as if she were afraid of scratching the pristine asphalt, then sat in the driver's seat for nearly a minute before getting out. Even from a distance, I could see her taking in the scope of the property, the manicured grounds, the stone facade, the 3-car garage that probably cost more than most people's houses. I met her at the front door, opening it before she could ring the bell. Up close, she looked smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow. The confident woman who dominated every room she entered had been replaced by someone uncertain and off balance. Jesus, Martin, she whispered, looking past me into the marble-floored foyer. What is this place? It's my house. Your house? She stepped inside without invitation, her heels clicking on the marble as she took in the curved staircase, the crystal chandelier, the oil paintings that the previous owner had left behind. How is any of this possible? I closed the door behind her and gestured toward the living room. Would you like some coffee? I was just about to make a fresh pot. I don't want coffee, Martin. I want answers. Where did this money come from? How long have you been planning this? And why didn't you tell me? We stood facing each other in the great room, 20 feet of Persian carpet between us. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the November landscape stretched toward the horizon, all bare trees and gray sky. My grandfather left me an inheritance, I said simply. $20 million held in trust. I found out about it 3 months before I moved out. Teresa's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, calculation, and finally anger. 3 months? You knew about this for 3 months and didn't tell me? That's right. But why? We're married, Martin. We're supposed to share these things. We're supposed to make decisions together. I walked to the windows and looked out at the grounds where I'd spent the morning raking leaves. When was the last time you asked for my opinion about anything important, Teresa? When was the last time you treated me like a partner instead of a burden? That's not fair, isn't it? I turned back to face her. At the Palmer House charity gala, you told a room full of people that I was extra weight. You said you were lucky to have drive because I obviously didn't. Do you remember that? Her face flushed. I was making conversation. I didn't mean anything by it. You meant every word. And you meant it when you told Patricia Mills that my biggest accomplishment was selling a strip mall in Schaumburg. You meant it when you laughed about my professional challenges with people who barely know my name. I was embarrassed, okay? People were asking about your work, and I didn't know what to say. You never talk about your deals anymore. Because you never listen when I do. Teresa moved closer, her voice softening into the tone she used when she wanted something. Martin, I know I've been difficult lately. The agency's been under pressure, and I've been taking that stress out on you. That's not fair, and I'm sorry. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work on our communication. No. The word stopped her mid-sentence. She blinked, as if she hadn't heard correctly. No. I don't want to fix this, Teresa. I want to end it. But you love me. We've been together for 20 years. You can't just throw that away because of a few arguments. I studied her face, looking for some sign that she understood what she'd done, some recognition of the years of accumulated cruelty and contempt. But all I saw was confusion and calculation, a woman trying to figure out how to reclaim control of a situation that had slipped beyond her grasp. I did love you, I said quietly. For a very long time, I loved you enough to pretend that your cruelty was just stress or honesty or high standards. I loved you enough to stand there and smile while you told our friends that I was a failure and a burden. But love isn't supposed to require that much pretending. Martin, I know about Victor Sloan. The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually took a step backward, her hand reaching for the back of a chair to steady herself. I know about the hotels and the lunches and the shopping trips. I know about the text messages where you called me predictable and boring. I know about all of it, Teresa. Her mouth opened and closed without sound. For perhaps the first time in our marriage, she had absolutely nothing to say. So no, I continued. We're not going to counseling. We're not going to work on our communication. We're going to get divorced, and you're going to move on with your life, and I'm going to move on with mine. This is about revenge, isn't it? She said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. You're punishing me. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. She looked around the great room again, taking in the expensive furniture and artwork, the obvious signs of wealth that she'd never known existed. What happens to us? To our life together? To everything we built? We didn't build anything together, Teresa. You built your agency, and I built my client base, and we shared a condo and a checking account. That's not a marriage. It's a business arrangement. And now you don't need the arrangement anymore because you have your grandfather's money. Now I don't need the arrangement anymore because I finally understand what I deserve. Teresa stood in my living room for another few minutes, looking lost and small in a space that dwarfed her usual commanding presence. When she finally spoke again, her voice carried a note of desperation I'd never heard before. What if I left Victor? What if I ended it and we started over? It's too late for that. But if I changed, you can't change what you've already done. You can't take back the things you've said. And honestly, Teresa, I don't think you want to change. I think you want to control this situation the way you've controlled everything else in our marriage. She walked to the front door without another word, her heels echoing in the marble foyer. At the threshold, she turned back, one last time. I never meant to hurt you, Martin. Yes, I said quietly. You did. After her car disappeared down the driveway, I poured myself a scotch and sat on my deck despite the November chill. The confrontation had gone exactly as I'd expected. Teresa trying to regain control, trying to negotiate her way back into a position of power, never quite understanding that some bridges couldn't be rebuilt once they'd been burned. My phone buzzed with a text message. We're not done with this conversation. I deleted it without responding and went inside to make dinner. Tomorrow I would call Harold Morrison and accelerate the divorce proceedings. Tonight, I would enjoy the profound silence of a house where no one questioned my worth or mocked my ambitions. The best revenge, my grandfather had written, was living well. But sometimes, living well required the courage to walk away from people who would never let you be anything more than their favorite target. The divorce papers were served on a Tuesday morning in February, while Teresa was having breakfast at the Peninsula Hotel with Victor Sloan. David Chen had timed it perfectly. The process server approached their table just as they were finishing their mimosas, presenting Teresa with the legal documents in front of a dining room full of Chicago's business elite. I wasn't there to witness it, but David's report was thorough. Teresa had gone white as she read the papers, her hands shaking as she realized the scope of what she was facing. The divorce petition included detailed financial disclosures, a complete accounting of my grandfather's inheritance, and a forensic analysis of our joint assets that left no room for negotiation. More importantly, it included a comprehensive documentation of her affair with Victor, complete with hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and text message transcripts that would make any attempt at alimony or asset division laughably impossible. Victor, according to David, had excused himself from the table within minutes and never returned. Whatever romantic fantasies he'd been entertaining about Teresa apparently didn't extend to messy public divorces and social media scandals. My phone started ringing at 11:30 a.m., but I was prepared this time. I'd changed my number the week before, giving the new contact information only to Harold Morrison, David Chen, and my sister Nina. Teresa's calls went straight to a disconnected number message. The real fireworks began that evening when Patricia Mills posted about the Peninsula Hotel incident on her Instagram story. She'd been having lunch 3 tables away from Teresa and Victor, and her account of the drama was breathlessly detailed. OMG, you guys, I just witnessed the most insane divorce drama at the Peninsula. Teresa Hale got served with papers right in front of her boyfriend, yes, boyfriend, and it was absolutely wild. She literally ran out of the restaurant crying while he just sat there looking mortified. I am living for this level of mess. Chicago elite Tanarurian divorce drama. Tea spilled. The post went viral within hours, shared and reshared through every social media platform where Chicago's professional class gathered to gossip about each other's misfortunes. The comments section became a feeding frenzy of speculation and judgment. Wait, so she was cheating while calling her husband an irresponsible? This is what happens when you publicly humiliate someone who turns out to be secretly rich. I feel bad for her, but also karma. That hedge fund guy dropped her so fast. Men are trash. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I heard the divorce papers included hotel receipts and everything. Everything. Teresa's agency began hemorrhaging clients within days. Chicago's business community was small and incestuous, and nobody wanted to be associated with a public scandal. The PR executive who'd built her reputation on managing other people's images couldn't control her own narrative. I learned about the agency's collapse through Harold Morrison, who'd been monitoring Teresa's financial situation as part of the divorce proceedings. 3 major clients terminated their contracts in the first week after the Peninsula incident. 2 more followed the next week. By the end of February, Teresa Hale Public Relations had exactly 1 remaining client, a boutique hotel in Evanston that apparently hadn't been following the social media drama. "She's going to lose everything," Harold told me during our monthly meeting at his downtown office. "The agency, the condo, probably her car. The prenup you signed protects all your assets, including the inheritance. She'll walk away with whatever she brought into the marriage, plus half of the joint savings account." "How much is that?" "Roughly $40,000, maybe $50 if she can sell some jewelry." I felt a brief pang of something that might have been sympathy, but it passed quickly. Teresa had made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. She'd chosen to mock me publicly, to cheat on me privately, and to build her life on the assumption that I would always be too weak or too grateful to fight back. She'd been wrong about all of it. The final confrontation came in March, at the Cook County Courthouse, where our divorce was being finalized. Teresa arrived with a lawyer who looked like he'd been hired from a strip mall legal clinic, a far cry from the white shoe firm she'd probably approached before learning about her financial situation. I arrived with Harold Morrison, whose reputation for discretion and ruthless competence had made him the go-to attorney for Chicago's old money families. The contrast was intentional and devastating. Teresa had lost weight since our last meeting, and her clothes hung loosely on her diminished frame. The confident woman who'd once commanded every room she entered had been replaced by someone hollow-eyed and desperate. "Martin," she said, as we passed in the courthouse hallway. "Please, we don't have to do this. We can still work something out." I stopped and looked at her for what I knew would be the last time. "Work what out, Teresa? You've lost your business, your boyfriend's moved on, and you're about to lose the condo. What exactly do you have to offer me?" "I could change. I could be the wife you deserved." "You had 20 years to be the wife I deserved. You chose to be something else instead." The hearing lasted 15 minutes. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen every variety of marital dysfunction, reviewed the evidence with professional detachment. The prenuptial agreement was ironclad, the documentation of adultery was comprehensive, and the financial disclosures left no room for dispute. "Divorce granted," she announced, bringing down her gavel with finality that echoed through the nearly empty courtroom. Teresa's lawyer tried to approach Harold afterward, probably hoping to negotiate some kind of settlement or ongoing support. Harold dismissed him with the kind of polite contempt that only came from 40 years of dealing with desperate people making impossible demands. I walked out of the courthouse alone, leaving Teresa to figure out her own transportation back to whatever temporary living situation she'd arranged. The March air was crisp and clean, carrying the promise of spring and new beginnings. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy now." I deleted it without responding and drove back to Oak Brook, where my house waited in perfect silence among the bare trees that would soon burst into leaf. I'd won everything worth winning and lost nothing worth keeping. That evening, I sat on my deck with a glass of wine and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. 20 years of marriage had ended with a judge's gavel and a stack of legal documents, but the real ending had come months earlier when I'd finally found the courage to stop accepting cruelty as the price of companionship. My grandfather had been right about the value of patience and strategic thinking, but he'd also been right about something else. The best revenge wasn't just living well, it was having the strength to walk away from people who would never let you live well while they were in your life. I raised my glass to the empty sky and smiled for the first time in months. Tomorrow, I would start building something new on the foundation of everything I'd learned about the difference between love and habit, between partnership and submission, between the person I'd been and the person I was finally free to become. The silence stretched endlessly around me, broken only by the sound of wind through the trees and the distant call of birds settling in for the night. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard.